Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I think we should go ahead and try to maintain the time the best possible way. Saif, are you okay with that for us to get started? Joey?
Yeah, it's taking a while for some reason to start posting live on Facebook. So
Okay, so we'll give it another moment.
yeah,
We'd like as many people as possible to be able to benefit from this. So the good news was we did a web Facebook Live last week, and we had over 2,000 people participate and watch the webinar. So hopefully we should have.
I think we're up at 2,400.
Perfect, perfect. And we should have a more robust participation today.
Excellent.
Let me know as soon as that's good to go.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, we're about to go live now.
Okay, fantastic. I see that it's streaming right now. So assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you are practicing social distancing during these very difficult times. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Shahid Rahman. I'm the Executive Director of the American Muslim Institution, AMI. We work in the DC area, and we work toward improving the narrative of American Muslims. What we've realized in the last few days, speaking to our partners and friends, is that everybody is facing a very challenging time, especially our nonprofit institutions that are providing very important services to our communities, whether locally, statewide, or nationally. And we came together with a group of our friends, including Brother Saif from Virginia Business Association. We partnered with Mgage a week ago, and also with the Virginia Council of Muslim Organizations to put together a webinar on how small businesses in our community could benefit from the CARE stimulus package that was just passed last Friday. And what we noticed was that there was such a tremendous interest that we decided we would have to do another webinar, but this one's specific to our nonprofits, especially because we have Ramadan around the corner, and I think we're going to be facing especially difficult times this year. I just wanted to share with you the overview of today's program. Congressman André Carson will be joining us shortly, and he'll be going over the stimulus package, what's in it. He'll be going over it from a very high level, and he has members of his staff here today that will be able to answer some questions. We have Andrea Martin, Omer Mirza, Jessica Garda, and Copeland Tucker. So they're all from his team. They're here to answer as many questions as possible. As far as a real specialist on the field who is really into the details, who has been working on this day and night for the last 2 weeks, we have Joey Musmar, who's a CPA, and from my understanding, he's just been doing this non-stop, and he has become the subject matter expert. I hope I'm not giving you too much credit, or not enough credit.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, fantastic. Followed by Joey's presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. I suspect there will be tons and tons of questions and answers, as there was last time. We're also going to be live streaming this because we know that we had over 150 people register this time. So we are expecting, if someone cannot make the call, they can always join via Facebook Live. So now I would like to hand it over to Saif to speak a few words, maybe share some information about VABA and also why we're doing this.
Thank you, Shahid. the reason we decided to do this, and it was an idea that we have been discussing for a while, because we saw the need in the community. And I know the need for nonprofits in particular because they don't necessarily have the same resources that some of the small business administration or small businesses have through SBA and other lending institutions. So we had a discussion with Secretary Carney, and a lot of credit goes to him and to Governor Northam's team in the Commonwealth of Virginia, as well as some of our partners on the federal side, to see how we could effectively serve the organizations, small businesses, nonprofits, to make sure that they knew how to apply. Because everyone talks about these things being available, but the technical ability to apply is always the difficult part. And we have some very smart people working at Dar al-Hijra Islamic Center, for example, but still, it's not an easy thing to do, to go through the application process. So I was getting so many calls from different community members that were business owners. So we decided that we would do this webinar. Throughout the, this is the second in the series. We hope to have more webinars about topics that are important to the community. And Virginia Business Association was a creation here in Northern Virginia to essentially bring together Muslim businesses, small businesses, so that we can leverage resources together and have an impact on policy. So it was created out of some concerned business owners that wanted to focus on issues relevant to small businesses in the area, as well as focus on issues of obviously social justice in our communities. What I'm going to be doing, Shahid, as we're going through is I'll be watching for the Facebook questions that come in, because last time we had a lot of questions come through the Facebook Live. So I'll be putting those questions to Joey and to the other panelists. And just as a quick note, everyone is muted. You can use the chat and the Q&A to ask the questions. And we ask that our panelists actually mute themselves while they're not speaking, just so that we don't have any feedback noises in the meantime. And I hope to do the same, obviously. But thank you very much for coming. I hope this is important, and please ask the questions. There is no stupid question, because you know, these resources are going to be first come, first serve. So the more information you have, the quicker you can apply for these resources, the more empowered our community is. And finally, I will say I was on a call earlier of religious leaders on the voice strategy team just a couple hours ago. And this is an issue that's being faced by so many institutions. So there's going to be a lot of people applying for this. Make sure you get the information and make your applications early. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Saif. Thank you so much for that brief summary. I know Congressman Carson hasn't been able to join yet, but he has a staffer, Andrea Martin, and she will go ahead and give us an overview of the CARE stimulus package, and we'll wait for the Congressman. Ms. Martin, you're up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting Team Carson. The Congressman should be joining us momentarily. So if you'd like, I can just go over sort of a top line description of what the House passed. And I'd like to just first point out that Congressman Carson and many members of the House worked really hard to provide a counter to the original bill that Senator McConnell submitted, which was more corporate bailout. And House members made sure that there was support for workers, as well as economic stimulus to prevent large sectors of the economy from failing or going into bankruptcy. So the individual rebates of about $1,200 to individuals and families was a big component. One big update today, in case you've not heard, that the IRS has announced that instead of requiring folks that are Social Security beneficiaries to have to file an additional return, they will not have to do that, and that's a big help for a lot of beneficiaries of Social Security. So in addition to the individual assistance, there was a tremendous amount of resources for healthcare providers, for hospitals, for the medical community, that builds on the second Corona stimulus package that was a little more focused on the health aspect. This third and last or most recent update provides additional resources for frontline health workers, for more testing, more protective equipment, and leave, so that folks don't have to make a choice between going to work or their health. The other thing that may be of interest is the section that was added for workers and small businesses, grants and loans to help small businesses weather this storm and help them avoid having to lay off employees, and then tax credits for firms that retain employees who don't lay them off to the pre-pandemic levels. There's a lot of funding for infrastructure, for rail support, like Amtrak, as well as transit, which is an important piece that will need some federal assistance. And even the airlines. There's sort of mixed feelings about the airline piece. There are loan guarantees and assistance, but we worked really hard to include strings and conditions to accessing those funds, and that was making sure that none of the funds would go to stock buybacks or executive compensation, but to really help the airlines continue to operate and to maintain their workforce, because you don't want an entire transportation sector to go bankrupt. At some point, hopefully we will be rebounding economically, and those are some of the top line pieces in the large package. There are some things that were not included that I know the Congressman would like to see more of regarding housing support. There is a moratorium on foreclosures and evictions for folks that are living in federally financed homes or housing. So if your mortgage is from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, there is a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures. If you are a public housing resident or a Section 8 recipient, you've got some coverage. What didn't get added was market rate renters. And so that's something the Congressman will be working on in the next package. I think those are the big top line pieces at the moment. And I can add more. But
No,
I'll stop there.
well, thank you so much, Andrea. I think what we can do is we can move on to Joey, and whenever Congressman Carson is able to join us, we can definitely loop him in or Zoom
Awesome.
him in the case.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm just going to share the presentation on the screen. And
Joey, while you're doing that, can I just, sorry, this is safe. Can we make sure people, so you have two options for asking a question. Please do it in the Q&A section because it makes everyone's life so much easier. Don't do it in the chat. I mean, if you don't know how to use it, do it in the chat, but please use the Q&A section because that way we can see which questions are answered and which have not been answered. And it makes for recording easier also. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Saif. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I wanted to go through the presentation, and there's a lot of things to cover. Ms. Martin covered a lot of the individual stuff. We're going to try to tailor this towards not-for-profit organizations. And when I say not-for-profit organizations, I need people to feel comfortable that if you're a registered masjid, you can still qualify for this, but there's going to be certain rules you need to keep in mind so you can understand how to do the calculations, okay? But let's go ahead and get started. So the agenda I'm going to cover is all of the different disaster loans and programs that the federal government is making available to NGOs. And I'm also going to cover the individual side because we're all affected by this. And there's certain things that also affect the NGOs, like charitable contributions and certain benefits that are going to go to the employees of the NGOs. So both ways, I think we're going to hopefully be able to address it in a proper way. So the first relief program that came out, and the way SBA likes it to be called, is the EIDL loan, which is Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And this offers up to $2 million of assistance and is a pure lending program through the SBA's originally established 7A program. And this money can be used to cover the basic bills, okay? And the entire country has been labeled a disaster, so anybody living in the contiguous US will qualify. The interest rate for not-for-profit organizations is capped at 2.75% per year, or APR. And along with this comes a very interesting up to 30-year term that you can have on this particular loan. And on top of that, you have the ability to make a deferral of the payments, and it can be 6 to 12 months. The most interesting component of this is that you do not ask for how much money you want. The government, i.e. the SBA, will tell you how much of this up to $2 million you qualify for. And the way you do this, if you are able to look at the forms which are available, is you look at form SBA form 1368, which determines the working capital, which is the amount of money the government is most likely going to lend to you. So you need to be able to go through and look at that to get it done. Now, when we started with the EIDL loan, the application process changed already 3 times. The first time was a comprehensive online application form that promptly crashed when about $500,000 from what we heard last time from the SBA, everybody applied to it at one time, seized the whole system. Then they went with a file Dropbox equivalent. That also crashed. So now they just resorted to a basically 3-page application where you put in some basic rudimentary information and you will get a confirmation number. And I've included at the bottom here the website that you would go to apply for the EIDL loan. And in return, you will then get that number where you can call the SBA, or they're going to probably reach out to you. Part of the application, which is very interesting, is you're actually going to give them your bank information right there on the application. Because what we've been hearing is sometimes they're just going to give you money based on the numbers they're seeing. As this issue evolves, we'll keep everybody posted. We also created in our website a link that's at the bottom that explains the entire disaster loan process as it was originally set up, which I don't believe is going to go away. It's just they're not going to make you go through the whole process right now. They're going to allow you to go through the first 3 pages, and then in return, they're going to go through and contact you and complete the application with you. But also you have the 800 number. So everybody for us started along this path until last Friday. And last Friday, the Paycheck Protection Program came out, which is a totally different and parallel sort of system where you can get a loan, but this loan has some very interesting turns in it. And that's why I put the asterisk there. I'll explain it. Number one, it's also SBA guaranteed. It has a pretty low interest rate, which is up to 4%. It has a 10-year arm, and same thing, has no fees charged to the borrower, but this can allow you to borrow up to $10 million. And it's based on a formula that is, which we will go into detail, that is 2.5 times your prior year's average payroll costs. And that I'll explain what that means in a second, because payroll cost is not what you think it is off the face value. If you borrow the money on the Paycheck Protection Program, you get the ability to defer 6 to 12 months of your first payment. So if you get the money today in April 2020, your first payment may not be until April 2021, which gives you a great deferral. Even though interest will accrue, it's still there. Okay? So what do you need to do to be eligible? Well, the whole idea they started out with for businesses is that it would be not more than 500 employees. Even though it says businesses in the rules, this also applies for NGOs. You cannot have an NGO the size of the United Way asking for this relief. This is something that would apply to the not-for-profit organizations that have less than 500 entities. And it doesn't matter if the entity is incorporated or not, okay? And under the rules, a 501c3, which is the public charity, qualify for this, okay? Now, we've been hearing people say that churches and mosques may or may not qualify. And what we're encouraging everybody to do, including the masajid and the religious organizations, is to actually apply, okay? Not the other way around. And when we go through and we look at this, we believe that the faith-based organizations are going to be able to go through and be able to apply, okay?
Hey, Joey, would you mind repeating that? I think that's a very, very important point.
Yeah, so what we're saying is that if you're a church, synagogue, or masjid, you should be applying for the PPP loan, period, okay? And that's what I wrote right here on the presentation. Now, certain
Joey, even if a bank tells them no.
Well, that's the thing. We're going to have to go through the banks, and that's one of the processes we're going to go through. Is that a lot of the banks don't necessarily see this thing eye to eye, and they're telling the churches and the mosques that, no, sorry, you don't qualify. We're not going to give you a loan. And most of the time, it's because you don't have a federal ID number, or you're not registered as a legal entity, but they can't get their hands around the legal structure of the masjid, because a 501c3 typically will file a Form 990, and therefore there's a tax documentation that they can use as a basis for the underwriting process. And that's the biggest issue we've been having to deal with right now, is that a religious organization does not file a 990, and therefore there is no quote-unquote tax filing. But if it has employees, then it should have a federal ID number. And in return, if it has a federal ID number, it has payroll, and therefore it should still be able to apply for the loan. Okay? So if you've been affected, which who has not been affected, between this window, that's the other qualification. This program is designed to be retroactive from February 2020. So anybody that is affected would qualify, and then the loans are supposed to be available all the way until June 30th, 2020. So even though the starting gun starts tomorrow, or some of the banks have been telling me as early as midnight tonight, the whole idea is this is available throughout this window until June 30th. If somebody does already have an SBA loan, okay, and they can go through and apply. It's not going to be a hindrance for them because they borrowed money in the past. So let's get into the weeds here. And how do you determine the average monthly payroll costs? The average monthly payroll cost for the loan is written as a simple equation, but nothing is simple. It's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll cost incurred from the prior year. So that's how you would look at it. You would look at the last year's numbers for the organization, and you would multiply them times 2.5. But the word average monthly payroll costs incurred has its own definition, and I'm going to go through that with you all. So the word payroll cost includes all of the following things that we've listed here, which is your gross salaries and wages, okay? But you can piggyback on top of it your retirement plans, your payroll taxes, and any employer side of health insurance that's paid by the employer. You take all of those numbers, and then anybody earning over $100,000 is capped at $100,000. So if somebody makes $150,000, you would put next to their name 100, and then come up with the proper calculation of what the SBA says is the average monthly payroll costs that are included. Okay.
Hey, Joey, can I quickly interject?
Yes.
So when you say payroll employees, are you talking about W-2 only, or is that 1099 contractors also?
No, that's a very good point, Shahid. It is 100% W-2 employees. If you have somebody that earns a 1099, they are not your employee, and they cannot be part of the average monthly payroll costs calculation. That would be considered an incorrect calculation. And that's why I put this at the bottom, is that if somebody is coming to you saying, no, I qualify to be part of this number. No, they need to file on their own. Okay. So the average monthly payroll cost, again, like I said, excludes people that make over $100,000. And some of the excluded costs also are for people whose work outside the US, and some other exclusions that I really don't think affect not-for-profit organizations. But let's assume it's a not-for-profit NGO that does relief work overseas. Anybody that gets paid overseas, they are not part of the package when you calculate average monthly costs. The entire law is designed to benefit stateside employees. Okay. So let's go through the most important part that makes the PPP so unique, which is the whole loan forgiveness component. And this has been the biggest thing that we've been dealing with, where there's people really excited about borrowing money. So the beauty of this is the government said that if you maintain your employee base, they are willing to forgive 100% of the loan. Okay. And forgiveness has sort of been defined and redefined a few times by the SBA. I looked at the website as early as today, and they said if you pay up to 75% of your average payroll to your staff and you don't go below that, you are not going to lose loan forgiveness. And at the same time, they also said that if you have staff that are working for you and you have a head count of what is known as FTE, which is full-time equivalent, then you would go through and calculate a baseline for that as of February 15th. And if you have the same number by June 30th, then you technically qualify for full, quote unquote, loan forgiveness. Then they added line number 3, which I have on the screen, which is the SBA will grant forgiveness to an amount equal to 8 months, or 8 weeks, that would be nice. 8 weeks of payroll costs, which includes all of the things we talked about before, as long as you retain the same head count of staff and maintain the salary levels, which I talked about can be dropped, but they cannot be dropped more than 25%. Okay? If during the process you receive any canceled debt, or what we call in the business a COD, then that also will harm your loan forgiveness. But in theory, again, you can go through, borrow money on the PPP, maintain your staff levels, keep your payroll equal to, but not less than 25% of the calculated average, and you would qualify for loan forgiveness. Okay.
Joey, one quick question before we hand it over to Congressman André Carson, who's just joined us.
Yes.
How do we define the 100,000 salary? Is that base? Does that include taxes, benefits? How do we?
That's a very good question, Shahid. The 100,000 is gross wages, and then you can burden, i.e. add to it, the payroll taxes, the health insurance, and the retirement plan, and come up with a higher number. But the gross wages are capped at 100.
Okay, fantastic. Joey, we'll get right back to you. At the moment, we've just had Congressman André Carson join us. He has been in Congress since 2008, and he's one of the few Muslim Americans in Congress, and he represents Indiana. And we're very lucky to have him today to share some of his insights about the bill, and we very much appreciate his leadership in Congress. Congressman Carson.
Thank you, Brother Shahid. Thank you, Joey. Joey's so thorough. We have Andrea and Omer and Copeland and Jessica on the call as well. I'm going to have to leave, so I hate to airdrop, but I want to thank Ambassador Siddiqui as well. Andrea kind of gave an overview. I've been on like 8 conference calls today with Speaker Pelosi and other chairs, trying to really work through this and really work through what it means for faith communities. We know that mosques are not eligible. However, and I think if someone has covered this, please forgive me. If that mosque, church, or synagogue, or temple provides a secular social service, then that nonprofit entity is eligible for the SBA programs. And we know, of course, childcare and housing and shelter services and food distribution services. So it's very important, but we're going to have 2 or 3 more installments that we're going to have to deal with. We're going to have part part 4, part 5, and maybe a part 6. What we know right now from early negotiations is that there will be an emphasis on infrastructure very heavily. We also know that some of us in the Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, and Asian Pacific Caucus, and of course the 3-person Muslim caucus, we're going to focus on criminal justice reform. We're going to focus on colleges and universities, particularly HBCUs and others. But I'm going to let Joey get back to what he's doing and have Andrea. I'm dealing with a 13-year-old right now, given my busy day, who got lost right before this conference. So you can imagine my anxiety and the boundaries that are being tested for those of you who have teenagers. So if you want to give me some advice right now, I'm welcome to it. So Jazakallah khair, and thank you all. And I'll let Brother Joey get back to his wonderful presentation. But again, Andrea, Omer, and Jessica are here to help, as well as Copeland.
The only advice is lots of supplication.
I know that's right. I know that's right, brother. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Congressman Carson, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
All right, I'll let Brother Joey do his thing.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I'm just
Thank
going to
you.
back to where I left off.
Shahid, do you want to just quickly go through some of the questions up here so that Joey can answer them technically before proceeding, so that it doesn't keep getting cut off?
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, fantastic. So one question, Joey, that people are having in different forms is, how does a nonprofit decide whether to apply for the AIPL or the PPP, or can they apply for both?
So one, they can apply for both, but they're really not supposed to participate in both programs. Typically, what we've been telling NGOs is, are you keeping your staff on board, or are you basically furloughing everybody? The PPP's entire objective is for the organization to keep its staff on board, or at least to bring them back if they did furlough them when they get the money. And therefore, if the organization's goal is to bring the staff back, we want to go with the PPP. And in return, the government's going to hopefully reward them. And if they can't, because of whatever situation they're in, then they should definitely think about the EIDL, because the EIDL gives them a very nice interest-free, low interest loan that is 2.75 versus the 4% on the PPP. And we actually later on in my slide, I have a comparison of those two loans head to head that we can present it to the viewers so they can decide.
Joey, one more quick thing. I think this is important. Perhaps I misheard, but I think I heard the Congressman mention mosques might not qualify if they're not providing secular services. Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, so we've been going through this, like I said before, and the law is saying the religious organizations don't qualify, but we've been on chat rooms of churches and other religious organizations, and they're actually encouraging their leadership to apply and let the banks decide if they qualify or not, versus not applying.
And Joey, do you mind if I chime in? My name is Omer Mirza. I'm Senior Policy Advisor to Congressman Carson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're loud and clear.
So just to piggyback on that, the information that we've gotten from our local SBA director is that on PPP, they do not have information on mosques, but on EIDL, just to echo what the Congressman said, the information that we've gotten is that the religious entity itself is not eligible, but if they have a nonprofit service like a daycare center or a food bank, that entity is eligible.
No, thank you so much for clarification, Omer. The more we can get, the better.
Sure.
Any other questions, Shahid?
I think we can continue. If something pops up, I'll definitely chime in.
So back to our regularly scheduled program. So what we have on the loan forgiveness calculation, which is very important for individuals to look at, is you have these two calculations. One is determining the reduction based on salaries. So what the government is saying they're going to look at is, which is the second bullet point, it was their reduction of an amount greater than 25% in the wages that you paid your staff. So when you do your application, you're coming up with the average payroll. They're going to take that and use that as their baseline. And then by June 30th, they're going to do the calculation to determine your loan forgiveness amount. And if you maintained or did not go below a 25% reduction in the average, then you would qualify for loan forgiveness. The second test, which is an alternative, is that it's based on the number of staff, and it's based on the FTE, which is full-time equivalent. And if you don't know what that means, you should talk to your accountant. But long story short, you need to do the calculation and compare it to the baseline, which will happen after 8 weeks. Okay?
Joey, I have one more question about this contractor issue. So if somebody is paid as a 1099 contractor, should the religious or nonprofit institution encourage them to apply for UI since they're not included in the payroll?
Yes, and when we talked to the Virginia Employment Commission here in Virginia, they encouraged everybody that's self-employed who receives a 1099, i.e. the gig workers of the world, to apply directly for unemployment benefits. And I'll be explaining unemployment benefits also in our presentation. Yeah, so let's get down to comparing these two programs real quickly, and I'm hoping this slide helps you compare them head to head. You have the EIDL, which is the first program that came out, and you have the Paycheck Protection Program. And when you compare them, they have the uses are there. One of them can be used for debt service. The other one cannot be used to cover other expenses. The EIDL has a limit of 2 million, and like what we said, the PPP has $10 million, but there's a loan forgiveness component, which is very nice that you can get. You see the interest rate, but then you go back again to the EIDL. The EIDL gives you up to 30-year, which is equivalent like a mortgage on any money you need to borrow as an institution that'll give you relief. The interesting components between the two is the EIDL always gives you the ability to seek other tax grant relief, while the PPP strictly prohibits you from using that. And I'll cover that later on. So hopefully this slide helps.
Joey, can we just go back to the last slide? Sorry.
Yes.
So the one thing that you mentioned a couple of times was interest. And one of the questions we're seeing again and again, and I think this one maybe SAFE can handle, is this issue of faith and interest and what we should be considering.
Yeah.
And it's a very difficult needle to thread. SAFE, I think maybe you can give some insights briefly.
Yeah, so we're actually going to reach out to the Fiqh Council to address this. But keep in mind that the PPP loans, if you keep your staff, that it becomes a grant essentially. So you're not paying interest. The rates that are being given for nonprofits are at like 2.5% or 2.75%, if I'm not mistaken, Joey.
Right.
And those rates typically tend to be below current inflation rates for the country. So it's in current monetary numbers, it's free money. But for the fiqh component of this, I think we'll be working on getting a fatwa from the Fiqh Council to address it. I will say that there is Hanafi fiqh actually already has some permissibility for this, particularly in quote unquote non-Muslim states, but I'm not going to give fatwas to people because that's not my position to do. But we'll get the Fiqh Council to address it. But if you do get the forgiveness, then there's no interest anyway. It becomes a grant essentially. And then there's also a 10,000 grant that's associated with the EIDL program. That's just a grant. That's not even a loan.
That is correct, and we have that in our slides. The prime rate, for everybody knows, sitting at 3.25. So technically, you're borrowing below the prime rate when you do the 2.75 comparison. Okay, so let's talk about that. So the next thing that you have is the economic injury grant, which you can apply for directly with the SBA website. And if you're applying for the EIDL, it literally is check the box, and the SBA promises within 3 days you're going to get $10,000. Okay, and it's fairly straightforward process. The other component that you can apply for, which you can only apply for if you have the EIDL loan, you cannot participate in this if you have the PPP, is the 50% employee retention payroll tax credit for wages paid for the employees. And this 50% tax credit is frankly fully refundable and goes against your payroll taxes. And it really is something that you can benefit from because it has a cap of $10,000 per employee. So if you have a full-time employee, you can get about up to $10,000 in tax credit just by keeping them on the payroll. okay? And the window is gonna be, again, February 15th through June 30th. So it's a very nice employee retention tax benefit that not-for-profit organizations can benefit from.
Joey, can you just repeat that part again, the $10,000? And one other question was, what is exactly the process? Because you mentioned it's a grant, right? Grant?
Yeah, well, so it's a tax credit. This is a grant, so let's go through. This is a grant. This goes through the SBA website when you apply for the EIDL. It literally is check the box, I want $10,000. That's it. This is a payroll tax credit. And for those of us that process payroll, when we take money from our staff, we're supposed to remit it to the IRS using EFTPS system and deduct it. We can actually claim the credit there. And as the non-for-profit, we get to keep up to $10,000 per full-time employee. Okay? This is a little bit complicated. We'd recommend you work with your payroll company or whoever processes your payroll, if it's a CPA, to make sure they know how to calculate this. The next one that we have is there's an additional incentive if you are in a cash flow crunch where the government says, hey, you withheld this Social Security, which, if for those of you that don't know, we take 6.2 from the staff. The employer actually is required to match that fund and pay in another 6.2 on Social Security. There's a whole Medicare component, but I just want to talk about the tax deferral. And this 6.2 deferral can be deferred on the first $137,700 of wages, so that you don't have to pay it into the government, and you can delay it until next year and pay it over a 2-year installments. So you can technically take $137,000 of money in Social Security that you'd have to pay and pay it over a 24-month period starting in January 2021. Okay? This is a deferral. This is not free money. You have to pay it back. But it's an option. We don't necessarily recommend it, but it's an option that's available. So now we go to individuals, and everybody's been talking about the cash rebate. And what you have on the cash rebate right now is a couple of things. One, which is the most important announcement, the IRS says they're going to start issuing cash rebates as of April 13th at the rate of like 5 million checks a week. And this literally just broke in the news like sometime earlier today. If you're an individual who's filing your tax returns and you failed to file your 2019, don't fret, they're going to use your 2018 taxes, but later on they're going to figure out if you did not qualify for the 2019. So there could be good news, bad news situation. What we're advising our clients is to really not get too lazy and just file their tax return if they can by April the 15th and file their 2019, so that whatever check they get will be the real check that they're going to get to keep. And if you are getting direct deposits and you file your tax return with a direct deposit, your money will come even faster because the government will debit it right into your bank account. So if you've never filed a tax return with a direct deposit, we highly encourage you to file that so that you have the ability to receive the money even faster. If not, you can go to the IRS website, which we listed below, and try to register for direct deposit so you don't have to worry until the check arrives in the mail if you really need the money. The interesting component that was already brought up by Ms. Martin is that now individuals who get Social Security benefits are eligible and they do not have to file a short tax return, which saves them a lot of grief. The other component you have is if you have dependent children under the age of 17 and you're below the income limits, each child is going to give you $500 on top of the $1,200 that you would have received for you and $1,200 for your wife. So this can turn out to be a pretty big check, given the days when we had during the Bush administration when we were getting the $600 check and everybody was making a big deal about it. This can be pretty sizable money for the individuals. And again, non-filers are encouraged to file a return. We really like them to not get too lazy because of the July 15th deadline. If you don't know what amount you're going to get and you're worried about whether you're going to qualify or not, our PowerPoint presentation actually has a link attached to it that the Washington Post created, which will tell you how much of the stimulus refund you qualify for. So when you guys get this copy, you'll be able to see it. You already said the tax filing deadline's been delayed, but not for not-for-profit organizations. NGOs still have to file their 990 by May. I'm supposed to say the 15th. I apologize. We said the first here. It's a typo. And therefore, if they don't have the ability to file, they can always file for a 6-month extension and go all the way to November 15th, 2020. Okay. The other part of the relief package has been for students who have federal loans. They can actually stop worrying about having to pay until October 1st, 2020. Okay. But this is not an automatic deferral. They need to contact their service providers to request the deferment. Don't get lazy again, be active and pick up the phone. For NGOs, the other component that's come up that's very nice is the fact that now anybody that wants to give zakat or donation and they don't itemize will be able to deduct up to $300 on their tax return. So let's assume you're at the 33% tax bracket. You donate $300, Uncle Sam's going to give you $100 off. So it's not a bad thing, in considering how many people are going to be in difficult situations. This is really good. And if you're going to be doing fundraising for the masajid and the not-for-profits during the month of April and May, this can convince hopefully individuals to donate at least $300, and Uncle Sam would give them a rebate on that or a partial, tax deduction. The other component that came up with that we also liked is that in the past, if somebody wants to be very philanthropic, the government would not allow 100% deduction if they take, for example, their entire $100,000 of taxable income and want to donate it. They would suspend that. This suspended amount is no longer there. As long as you're going to donate cash as an individual, you can, in theory, donate as much as your entire paycheck on your W-2 and still be able to claim it as a tax write-off. Donor-advised funds do not qualify for this. If you don't know what a donor-advised fund, that's fine. It's when people want to put a lot of money but don't necessarily want to distribute it all at one time during their lifetime. Corporations also had their limit increased. This is for C corporations, from 10% of their taxable income up to 25% of their taxable income. So you NGOs that know those corporations, you should go after them and see if they're willing to be more charitable. Now let's talk about unemployment benefits. The CARES Act really gave a boost to a lot of individuals, which I think is one of the biggest saving graces we have in this act for the average individual. In the regular state unemployment benefits as listed on the chart, Virginia would have been only $378 a week, which is very meager compared to even the other states around us. But with the CARES Act, there's going to be effective April 1st, which was yesterday, a $600 a week supplemental, which really hits a very good tone here, because you can get $978 a week until July 31st, 2020, if you've been laid off, which should really help. On average, if you're making even $70-some thousand and you're laid off, this will fully restore you as an individual. So anybody that is in a hot situation and they don't have money, they really should go to their local unemployment office and seek this benefit, because it should really take care of a lot of things for them to make ends meet. Okay. Other components was no 1 week waiting period. Basically, what the unemployment agencies are trying to do is distribute the money within days. Some of them are doing it within 3 days, some are doing it within 4 days, some are doing it within 5 days. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, and you do not have to go to any unemployment office. You can literally go and do this online. The other component that we had that came up with is the family sick leave benefit. So if you're one of the individuals who does get sick, and whether you're full-time or part-time, according to the Families First Corona's Response Act, which was one of the acts that was passed, you can get up to 12 weeks of leave to take care of yourself or to take care of a family member, and even if you have to take care of a child because they can't go to school. And organizations between 50 to 500 people really have to follow this new law. So if you work for one of those companies and you need to do this, by law, you can contact the HR department. You're allowed to take 12 weeks off, okay? If you're self-employed, okay, and you work for someone else, you can make the same request with the unemployment office. So there's some other miscellaneous deductions and
Joey, would you mind just repeating that? So if you're self-employed,
yeah, you're eligible for a tax credit up to 2 weeks. Now this is a little bit different because again, if you're self-employed, you can't go to yourself and pay yourself for unemployment. So you're going to get a tax credit up to 2 weeks of pay against this amount. Again, if you don't know how to do this calculation, because you're not going to really get cash, it's really a tax credit, you have to talk to the individual CPAs who know how to prepare this.
so those that are self-employed, are they able to apply for unemployment?
So the first answer is, if you're self-employed, you apply for unemployment benefits. If you are still going through the process and you are sick, i.e. you can't work, you can actually apply for this tax credit. And let me explain, and then this will take a little bit of time. When you're self-employed, you have to make quarterly payments to the government because the government's supposed to take from you income tax and self-employment tax. And every quarter, you're supposed to make those payments. Well, when you do this calculation and you're sick, you can say, all right, I owe you this much money. I'm going to give myself a tax credit that discounts the amount I have to pay you on a quarterly basis because I was sick for 2 weeks. So I hope that helps. I know it's not the easiest thing to understand if you're an employee, but that's how it would work. The other benefits that we have is really not tax related, but Congress has given states authority to go through with SNAP households to give them emergency meals and reduced price meals for free. HUD, as was mentioned before, they've suspended all foreclosures and evictions. And a lot of individuals who have retirement plans and they want to access them because they're sick, okay, they can actually get distributions up to $100,000 without having to pay any early withdrawal penalties. And then finally, if you are an older person and you have what's known as RMDs, required minimum distributions, you can actually waive and not take that money if you don't want to, which is really a forced distribution on you, and you will not be penalized by the government. These are the resources that we have put together for the individuals in this program that they can use to take advantage and learn about how to file for unemployment, call customer service at the SBA, or apply for the new PPP program. And with that said, we are open for questions.
Okay, fantastic, Joey. I really appreciate it. Everyone, feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A section, and I'll go ahead and ask our esteemed panelists some of the questions that are currently in there. So if someone is making over $150,000 in 2019, does that mean they're not going to be receiving any of the $1,200 from the stimulus? And the second question related to the stimulus, if you're over 18 and you're a dependent, does that mean you're not getting a stimulus check also?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer the second question first because it's easy. Yeah, you don't get anything if you're above 17 years of age. Sorry, you're now a citizen. Ideally, if you have a good accountant, they would not claim you as a dependent. They'll file your own tax return and you'll get $1,200 instead of $500 if you worked. So that's the key. Yeah. Okay. The first question now, if you are making any amount above $100,000, it is not a disqualifier. You're capped at $100,000 when you're doing the PPP calculations. And therefore, when you're calculating your average payroll, you don't put 150, you're just going to put 100,000 and you go from there.
Can I add one thing? As I understand it, it's up to 150,000 for married workers.
I think you're talking about the rebate. They were talking about the PPP.
You're right. Sorry.
So no,
you're right.
So for the PPP, and you're calculating the average payroll, you can calculate it up to $100,000.
Got it. You're right. Thank you.
My pleasure. Shahid,
Okay.
what else do you have?
Fantastic. So I think someone potentially filled out the paperwork for the, I wrote it down. It was the $10,000 grant, but I
Yes.
think they forgot to check off the 10,000. What should they do? Can they go back in?
Yeah, they
You
should
mean
be
they
able-
filled out the EIDL and didn't check the box?
There
Yes.
you go. So they should be able to log right back into the SBA and check the box.
Fantastic.
Okay?
And just to piggyback on that, when they do log back in and check the box, they will not lose their place in line. Their place in line will remain. They will not go to the back of the line.
Thank you, Omer.
Fantastic. So if any organization gets a $10,000 EIDL grant, do they still qualify for the PPP loan/grant?
The short answer is yes, but they will deduct 10,000 from their loan.
Okay, next question. We're saying that 100% of, we're saying there's 100% loan forgiveness possibility, but it's not automatic. So what exactly is the process for loan forgiveness?
Okay, so this is obviously someone that came late to the event because we went through the reduction. So I'm going to repeat it one more time. When you go through and you do the loan forgiveness, the whole idea behind the PPP is for you as an organization to maintain your staff. You'll have a baseline that will be calculated, which is your average payroll costs, which is defined in my presentation. And then they're going to compare it on June 30th and see if it's equal to that amount. And if it is, then you're going to get the loan forgiveness. If it's below, it'll start getting watered down.
Okay, fantastic. Next question. Are the EEIG and the EPTD part of the EIDL, or are they separate programs?
This must be a government contractor, but it's okay. So the EIDL is the equivalent of a 7A program, okay? And the tax credit is a tax credit that can be piggybacked on top of the EIDL. The PPP is supposed to be its own program, and you're not supposed to try to get more benefits on top of it.
Okay, fantastic. So I have a very specific question related to restaurants.
Oh
So
yeah,
there's
those
some
poor guys.
franchise restaurants that are not able to access funds right now. Do you have any suggestions right now for them?
Well, actually, they are allowed to file as long as the individual who's in the franchise. So let's assume I own a McDonald's franchise, okay? I'm allowed to still apply for the relief, but I can't have 15 McDonald's franchises and I employ more than 500 people, okay? So there's a specific subsection in the application where you say, yes, I'm a franchisee. I have a one store, for example, or maybe two stores. We're completely in hot water. You can still apply.
Understood. Thank you. So I think this is a really unique question for teachers. So when calculating the average monthly payroll as a school, should we divide by 10?
No, 12, sorry. It helps you actually in one way, but it hurts in another way. So yes, unfortunately, the math on that one, as far as I know, is divide by 12.
Fantastic. Okay, so next question. When the PPP loan is up to 2.5 months of payroll and
Yeah.
forgiveness is only for 8 weeks of payroll, so there's a gap of 2 weeks, is that not forgiven?
Well, no, the point of it is the law is very clear. They're willing to forgive up to 8 weeks of benefits. That is the cap on this. When you go through and you multiply the payroll, they're using your average monthly fully burdened payroll, multiplying it by 2.5 times to determine your loan amount. So if you're looking at it from a mathematical equation, if God forbid you're going to have to, you're going to employ people April, May, and June, you're looking at 3 months, okay? And I think that's what the viewer is asking about is, wait a minute, they're only giving me 2.5 months worth of money, but I'm going to have to pay 3 months. Yes, that is literally what is going to need to happen if you want to get the credit. But think about it, you're paying for 2 weeks worth of payroll and the government's going to give you 2.5 months in return for free. Hopefully you're earning some sort of money along the way.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. So the next question is, it has to do with the underwriting as far as the loans are concerned. How strict is it going to be in terms of the documentation for showing that you've been adversely affected by Corona?
The underwriting process is supposed to be very streamlined. i.e. it should be very easy. And I think the effect aspect of it is not what the SBA is going to look for, because they know pretty much everybody's been affected negatively by this. That's why they did a national disaster.
Fantastic. So next question is, is there the only way to get the grant is, do you have to apply for the loan, or is that independent potentially?
So right now, the interesting component of this is that the only means we know to apply for it is through the SBA website, which seeks that check the box. Okay. Remember, when you do that, you still haven't signed any loan documents. And therefore, if the government says, hey, we want to give you a loan on the idle, you can say, no, thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So one question that's popped up a couple of times is, as far as nonprofits and mosques are concerned, who should be signing off on the documentation? Should be a board member, a board president, or an employee?
So typically it'll be one of the board of trustees for an NGO. Ideally, it should be the treasurer.
Ideally, it should be the treasurer.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question, and it might have been asked before, is there any specific requirement for nonprofit employees to qualify for unemployment benefits?
They have to be W-2 employees.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, this is a question that's popping up. I think you might have answered it, but let's just hear it one more time. So what are the options currently for the self-employed? I heard the CARE Act package will eventually give guidelines to states for how states should approach this.
So again, all the states, you will go to the unemployment office of the states online. You will apply as long as you, as a self-employed individual, have received a 1099, filed a tax return, and paid self-employment tax. You're going to be in the system and you will qualify for self-employment. What I can tell you, Shahid, the issue we've been having to deal with is when somebody says they're self-employed, but they've never reported themselves as self-employed, i.e. they're making money but not declaring it. They're the ones that unfortunately are going to be in hot water. And we highly recommend they consider filing their 2019 tax return, reporting their self-employment income, and being part of the system.
Okay.
And the other one that we're running into is when somebody has an S corporation and the S corporation owner never gave himself a salary or herself a salary because they didn't want to pay employment tax, and now they're going to end up having to see that they're not going to get this benefit.
Okay, this is another very specific case. We have a home daycare provider,
Okay.
sole proprietor, no employees, and they had to shut down because of COVID-19.
Of course.
Should they be applying for unemployment, or is there a different path they should consider?
They can actually apply for unemployment, and they can also apply for a loan because they're a business. And that's the part I need all self-employed people to remember. Just because you're a sole proprietor doesn't mean you're not a business. You are a business, even if it's a one-man show. So you can, if you look at it, you can apply as an individual for unemployment benefits, and you can still apply for a loan. Okay? And for those individuals that don't necessarily need to borrow a lot of money, there's even an express SBA loan up to $25,000 if somebody needs that. I mean, I didn't have it in my presentation because this day and age, $25,000 doesn't go far, but that is an option for them, or they can still go into the idle and apply for a business loan just like everybody else.
Okay, fantastic. Quickly switching gears, as far as the rebate is concerned, the $1,200,
Yeah.
What if you owe the feds money? Would you still get?
That's a very good question. They probably won't give you the money. They'll give you a credit against the balance you owe. But what we've heard, and again, all jokes aside, what we've heard is they may actually give them the money. But I can't tell you because nothing's been distributed, so I can't tell you which way it goes. The Internal Revenue Code is pretty clear. No refund is issued if you owe money. They always take your refund away. But I've also heard that they may not do it this time. So it's really time will tell.
Okay, fantastic. So I think this question is about a business. If the facility opened on July 1st, 2019,
Okay.
and was not open for 12 months, then how do you calculate payroll?
Then you will divide it by 6. Okay. The rules are, the way that we're written right now is to take the average payroll for 2019 and then to take the average payroll if a business was established in January 2020. The only businesses that should be getting shortchanged is if somebody had the unfortunate timing of opening up a business March 1st, 2020, because they'll get no benefit.
Okay, next question. For self-employed, is there an extra $600 a week that applies? And
Yes,
when?
for unemployment benefits, yes, and it's effective April 1st, yesterday.
April 1st, yesterday. Okay.
Yeah. They should go to the payroll and employment office online, file, and as long as they're part of the system because they paid in prior years, they'll be accepted.
Okay, I think this is a little bit more again about the 1099 issue. It seems
Yeah.
like a lot of our friends are paying their employees potentially via 1099. So if you received a 1099 and filed a tax return and got a refund from the IRS, when you filed the return, do you still qualify for unemployment?
Yes, because as long as you filed your tax return as a self-employed individual, you will qualify for unemployment benefits.
Joey and Shahid, this is safe. I want to jump in here for just a second. This is what happened when we spoke with Dr. Megan Healy, who's the governor's workforce advisor.
Yes.
Her guidance is, even if you're in doubt, apply, because the guidelines are changing every day. That you may not be applicable, or it may not be applicable to you now, but it may be applicable to you in a few days, and it would be revisited. So even if you don't think you are eligible, go ahead and apply. That was the workforce advisor to the governor's advice.
Thank you, Saif. That is exactly what I heard also.
Okay, fantastic. Would you mind going over the implications of PPP if an employee is laid off?
Well, if an employee is laid off by the employer has a choice. They can, one, replace that employee with another employee. They can hire back the employee, or they're going to have a reduction in their employer loan forgiveness. That's it.
Okay, fantastic. I think we're almost coming to a conclusion, but we just have a couple of more questions. And Joey, just to clarify, you're going to be sharing this presentation with us, right? We can share it to all the participants?
The idea is to share the entire thing with the participants so that they can use the links. And if they didn't take notes, they can have the original thing.
Some people are not very good students.
No, that's no issue. It's no problem.
Okay, so this is, again, I think specific to the loans for nonprofits. If a nonprofit is renting an office, can they apply the rent? Can they apply, I suppose, the money toward rent? And
So the answer is yes. The short answer is yes. On the PPP,
okay.
It allows organizations to pay mortgages and to pay rent.
Even if right now, even though the institutions are closed?
They still have to pay rent to their landlord. It's okay.
Okay.
Hopefully their landlords are giving them some sort of deferment, and typically the banks, just so if anybody has any mortgages or loans on their property, there's been 3-month deferments coming out left and right just by people reaching out to their lenders.
Okay. Last couple of questions. As soon as I said the last couple of questions, we see them coming in. Somebody asked, if I own more than one business, am I allowed to apply for EIDL for each business?
Yes, the short answer is yes. So let me explain that. When you apply for either the PPP or the EIDL, you are going to fill in a section about something called affiliation. And as long as the total ownership of the multiple businesses that you have do not exceed 500 full-time employees, you can do that. So let's assume you've got 3 restaurants or you've got 4 construction. You will apply for every single legal entity on its own and just show the common ownership in the loan application, and you'll be able to borrow money for each one of these affected entities.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is very specific to a nonprofit school.
Yeah.
If we have 20 teachers and we laid off 4, can we still qualify for loan forgiveness?
Yes, because at the end of the day, they're employing 16 out of the 20. So if you do the math on that, you're able to defer 76% of the loan that you borrow because you kept 76% of your staff employed. So we would highly recommend, if they're going to keep this many on payroll, to go through the PPP.
In the SBA loan application, is there anything specifically that says where you tick off if you're a nonprofit or charitable organization?
Yes, the PPP actually gives you the ability to check off if you're a not-for-profit, tribal organization, and some other options right at the top.
Okay, fantastic. So again, about 1099s, again, very popular.
Yes.
Is it correct to say that if you are a 1099, you can apply for only the 10K plus unemployment?
Okay, so let's go through. If you are self-employed, you need to go through the EIDL lending program, which is through the SBA disaster loan website that we had on the screen. And you will be filling out that form and you can request for the $10,000 grant. Separately, you will file for unemployment as an individual with your local state unemployment agency, and you will qualify for unemployment benefits.
Joey, quick question. I mean, I know everything right now is very fluid.
Yes.
And as you're seeing every week, we're seeing the unemployment numbers, at least right now, double. And suppose you don't take advantage of what's being offered today. And let's say you get laid off in May or June.
Yeah.
Is this still going to be around, or are we too late?
No, I think on the government side of the equation for unemployment benefits, those will always be around. It's not like it's a finite amount of money. What is a finite amount of money is the money that's available to lend by the SBA, where they set aside, I forgot, $340 billion or some high amount, but they are going through record applications, and the banking institutions have made it perfectly clear to us they are going to do first in, first out, and they're going to process their clients first, and whoever comes in first gets their line, they gets to stand in line and get the money. Sooner or later, the funds will be completely exhausted. It looks like it's going to be sooner, but at the same time, we don't know.
Okay. Again, I think I know the answer to this, but can I hire myself tomorrow and apply for PPP?
Okay. So yes and no. So if you own an existing business and you are, let's just say you stop paying yourself because things weren't going well, you can put yourself on the payroll. But if you're the only employee in that business, most likely they're going to see through that and you're not going to get loan forgiveness, because remember what the baseline calculations are. Last year's payroll, okay? So if you never paid yourself in 2019, your baseline basically is probably going to be zero, and you probably will not qualify for the funds.
Okay, fantastic. All right, I think we're definitely wrapping up right now.
Okay.
Oh, just quick question. So if you're taking a loan for rent and your landlord has decided to defer your rent,
Yeah.
Is that okay that you're taking that loan against it still, despite the fact that it's been?
Well, you're not taking a loan under the PPP or the EIDL just for rent.
Okay.
The whole idea is you're really taking it to pay your staff money. So if you take it against the PPP and you furloughed all your staff and now you're getting a freebie on rent, then most likely this will be 100% zero forgiveness loan. If you are going through and you're paying all your staff and then you got a lucky agreement with your landlord and did not have to pay the rent, then that's great news. It's not going to hurt you.
So Joey, I know I said that was the last question, but this is a really good question. Are EIDL loans being reported to credit bureaus?
So that's very interesting. What we've been hearing is the answer is no. Okay, but I can't vouch for it one way or the other because I don't know. I know that there's going to be 100% collateral by the SBA.
Yeah.
Andrea, do you have insight?
Yeah, I don't know if there is formal guidance out of Treasury yet, but I do know there's been a flurry of letters, congressional letters, urging the administration to prohibit negative reporting, credit reporting as a result of COVID experiences, whether it's unemployment or defaults or whatever. So while I've not seen an official announcement yet, hopefully that will come soon.
Go ahead. It's going to be reported on your credit, and
Okay.
It's not negative because they're going to file UCC when you apply for anything through the SBA. there's UCC liens associated with that, and they're going to collateralize these things. Even if you have no collateral, they'll look at they'll file a UCC against the business. So essentially, yes.
Okay.
And if you are attached to your business in terms of a credit, yes, it will, you essentially will, even though you're not a direct person that is owing it, your business is, but your name is attached to it, so it'll show up on some of your credit reporting. Not necessarily negative reporting, it'll just show up as an obligation.
No, thank you so much, Steve.
Fantastic, everyone. I would love to thank everybody, all of our panelists, Joey, Omer, Jessica, Saif, Copeland, Andrea. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know everyone is working really hard these days, lots of overtime going on. Saif and I and Joey were planning on trying to see what additional types of webinars we can do, especially for the nonprofit community. And we hope to get back to all of you sometime next week. We're discussing different ways that we could be of service. I hope everyone has benefited from this. We have everyone's email address, everyone that's registered. We're planning on sharing this. We'll send you an email with the presentation, with the Facebook Live, with the webinar. I hope you share it with all of your friends. And on behalf of the American Muslim Institution and on behalf of Virginia Business Association, we'd like to thank you all for joining us. And I hope you all benefited from this program. Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.